What's up, y'all? Henry Higita here with another episode of Across the Pitch, where we also like to play the kids. Noah Cobb, Dominic Chanqui, come on down. Ronnie Dyla is showing his faith in the kids, and they have passion, and they're here to play. And Atlanta United could use some of that passion given some of the stuff we've been hearing throughout the week. Anyway, the next stop for Atlanta is Chester, Pennsylvania, where they will be taking on the Philadelphia Union. And to help me preview that game, let me welcome our guest, Todd Lewis of the Free Kick Podcast. Todd, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and looking forward to talking about this matchup. And it's a matchup where I feel like the last couple of years, it's no telling who's going to win these matches. It's always back and forth, always close with these two, whether it be at Subaru Park or down in Mercedes-Benz. So, looking forward to this matchup on Saturday.
Absolutely. And it's two sides that come into this season with new head coaches kind of looking to build a new team. But let's take a look at Philadelphia because it seems like they're undergoing a lot of change. And it starts with the manager, Bradley Carnell. Why was the change from Jim Curtin necessary?
If you're asking for my opinion, do I think it was necessary? I don't think it was. But if you ask sporting director Ernst Tenner, absolutely it was necessary. He had mentioned at his end of the season press conference that, yeah, one of the main reasons that they moved on from Jim Curtin, and he said, if he was in Europe, he would have moved on from him during the April-May schedule where the Union went pretty much 3 months winless. And then they started to turn the season around, or at least it looked like winning their last two games before they got into League's Cup against New England and Nashville. And then they go into the League's Cup, go all the way to the third place game, lose to Colorado Rapids, and then come out of that a little bit hot, and then end the season on a poor note, losing to FC Cincinnati on the final day, missing out on the playoffs for the first time since 2017. And so when you look at the way that the Union season went, a lot of injuries, a big uh, part of the injuries last year was starting goalkeeper Andre Blake, missed 51% of the Union's games in all competitions last year. And Andre Blake's been one of the best goalkeepers since he's been in this league. And, once he retires, once he hangs up the gloves, he'll go down, in my opinion, as a top 5 goalkeeper ever in MLS. And so when you're missing somebody like that, you're going to struggle. And the Union brought in Oliver Zemla, who was a goalkeeper with Louisville in USL Championship, and he was not great last year. And so then the Union promoted Andrew Rick, who was going to get a homegrown contract eventually last year, but I think because of the poor play from Oliver Zemla, from Andre Blake getting injured so often last season, it kind of pushed that step further to giving Andrew Rick a homegrown contract. And so the Union were just really, really questionable in the goalkeeping department last year. A lot of mistakes defensively too, and we've seen defensive mistakes this season with Union, particularly in Jacob Glesnes. He's a player that gets ridiculed a lot by media and fans alike. Just a lot of slow steps to the ball, gets beat 1v1 a lot. But Ernst Tenner decided, this is a good chance to reset, not only the team, but the head coach too. And what's interesting about that too, and I remind Union fans about this because I think it's really, really easy to miss, and even people nationally too. Jim Curtin, previous to 2024, had signed a contract extension in 2023 through 2026 World Cup. Him and Ernst Tenner decided, hey, we're going to see this out until 2026. And Ernst Tenner, well, decided, hey, we're going to move on from you. You missed the playoffs. You guys didn't play good soccer. Ernst Tenner wants to play press, press, press. The Union got away from that, playing more of a possession style of soccer, which I think was necessary because of the injuries that they had. And Jack McGlynn, who I'm sure we'll talk about here in a bit, being one of the players that the Union moved on from before this season started. Jim Curtin wanted to bring the best out in Jack McGlynn. We all know that he's not a pressing player. He's a player that's good on the ball, and going to a team like the Houston Dynamo, it's going to bring out his best characteristics. But Jim Curtin did the best that he could with the players available because of the injuries. And unfortunately, the Union couldn't overcome those injuries, and they wind up missing the playoffs, like I said, for the first time since 2017. And Ernst Tanner decides to sack Jim Curtin after the season, goes out and brings in Bradley Cornell, a manager who your listenership should be familiar with his time at New York Red Bulls as an assistant manager and interim coach, and then St. Louis City's very first manager. We all remember what St. Louis did in the first year in MLS, winning the Western Conference, and Ernst Tanner wanted to get a coach that fit his ideology, press, 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 and that's exactly what Ernst Tanner's got in Bradley Cornell.
And so you reset at the coaching position, you reset on the roster. And actually, let's get into part of that reset with some of the transfer business over the winter. So, first of all, I want to spotlight one of the more interesting incomings, Bruno Damiani. He is from Nacional, from Uruguay, and he's come in as kind of this youth striker, sort of. I believe he's 22, if I'm not mistaken. Had a goal in his debut against Cincinnati this season. What's going to be his role in this squad?
Starting player. I mean, the Union paid $3.4 million for him, and when that's the Union's highest transfer fee, which it's crazy for the Atlanta fans listening to this, where you guys just trashed the transfer fees this past offseason with Latte Lot, Miguel Almiron, Marichuk too. You guys, I think, played a hefty fee last year to Atalanta for him. So yeah, 3.4 million. That's crazy for the Atlanta fans to hear, but for Philadelphia fans, they were happy to finally see the Union go out and spend that type of money to bring in a player like Bruno Damiani. And again, you're spending that kind of money, you expect him to go into the starting 11. It took him a little bit to get acclimated to this team, to his teammates. And we saw Bradley Cornell go with the Mikal Uhr Ty Brewer partnership a lot. But yeah, I expect him to be a starter from here on out just because they paid such a high fee. And yeah, he's a player that's hungry. He's a player that fits his system, that's good in hold up play. And that's what Bradley Cornell values in his strikers, players that are going to hold up the ball, connect well with the two wingers or the outside tens, and make those late runs into the box and try to get on the end of some aerial crosses. So, yeah, Bruno Damiani, I expect him to probably start here on out.
Do you have any kind of predictions, expectations for his goal contributions this season?
Man, 8 games into the season. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really say it's too early, right?
Quarter of the way
I
through.
would say, yeah, right. I would say a good season for Damiani would probably be 10 goals in all competitions. So that's including assuming the Union make the playoffs, because it seems like the whole league makes the playoffs now. Assuming that he plays in US Open Cup, because the Union are one of the teams that play in the US Open Cup. So yeah, I would say if he gets 10 goals in all competitions, that would be a pretty solid season for him. I don't expect a lot of assists. None of the Union's forwards are really going to get a lot of assists. It's going to be from their fullbacks and from their 2 10s. So yeah, just goals, goals, goals. It's what the Union are going to want out of their forwards.
Goals, goals, goals. That stuff used to come from Daniel Gazdag, whom y'all moved on from. 72 goals, 24 assists, and 161 appearances for the Union. Where did that move come from and why?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Gazdag was in the final year of his contract in 2026. He had a club option, and he was looking for a pay raise. We don't know what the numbers would have been for 2025 until the MLSPA releases the salary guides for the season. But last year, Gazdag was making around $1.7 million, which was the second highest on the Union. He and his camp were looking close to $3 million, and the Union didn't feel comfortable paying that much for Daniel Gazdag. And you had talked about 72 goals since 2021 for Gazdag, and you can see why his agent and him felt that he needed a pay bump. And I did this exercise on my show 2 weeks ago, I think it was, looking at other number 10s in MLS, and his numbers are very similar last year to a Diego Rossi, a Ryan Gauld of Vancouver Whitecaps, Carlos Heel. And so these guys were making around that $3 million to $3.5 million mark. I think Carlos Hill was making a little bit over $4 million last year, so he's kind of an outlier there. But yeah, it's easy when you look at the goals and assists that these number 10s were making, and they were making around $3 to $3.5 million. You can see why him and his agent thinks that he's valued around that number. So yeah, all in all, the Union didn't feel comfortable giving him that kind of money. Didn't want to disrupt the wage chart. Mikal Uhr makes the most for the Union at just that $2 million, and so is giving a player $3 million really going to destroy your wage structure? Probably not, but it's the way of business that Ernst Tanner likes to do. And usually, if a player is gonna be close to winding out their contract, if they can't agree on a new deal that's good for both sides, then we saw it with Julian Kranza, we saw it with Jack Elliott, with Leon Flock. They've all left on free. So unfortunately for Daniel Gazdag, he uh, wasn't able to get the contract that he wanted from the union. Did say that if he had it his way, he would have retired in Philadelphia. He was happy. His family was happy in Philadelphia, but you can't fault a player where you only get one career. And so if they're not going to hit your value, which you think you're worth, then you go to a team that's going to value you and pay you your money. And going to the Columbus Crew, I don't think anybody would have any issues going to one of the best teams in MLS. So for Daniel Gazdag, I think this move is going to work out. The Union got $4 million for Columbus Crew. I think that's fair value for a player that was in the final year of his contract. Yes, he had a team option, which I assume would have probably been picked up by the Union. But all in all, I think there's a deal that worked out for everybody. And yes, it's hard losing a player that scored 72 goals, but I should remind the fan base that 41 or 42% of those goals that Daniel Gazdag scored came from the penalty spot. And so when you look at that perspective too, okay, maybe he isn't justified the $3 million that he's asking for. So all in all, the Union are happy with this deal. Columbus is happy with the deal, and Daniel Gazdag is happy going to a team that sees his value.
So now that he's gone, right? How do you replace a player that was so important to this team over the last 3 seasons? Who replaces him?
For the time being, it's going to be Indiana Vasilev. We saw him make the first start since Gazag's been gone over the weekend against New York City. Vasilev was a former player in St. Louis during Bradley Cornell's tenure, where he's usually one of the first players picked in the starting 11. Bradley Cornell, Indy Vasilev have a really, really good relationship with one another. And yeah, for the time being, I think that Indy's going to get that spot. There was reports out there that Indiana Vasilev, even when Gazdag was here, was pushing for a starting spot in the starting 11. So makes it a little bit easier for him getting into the 11 with Gazdag out. But the Union could always go out too and sign a player, and the transfer window doesn't close until April 23rd. The Union just got $4 million for Daniel Gazdag, so it's not like they don't have the money. But Ernst Tanner had said last Friday that, for the time being, they're going to roll with the squad they have. He believes that they have enough depth to get them through the summer window, and if they feel like they need to make a move, then they'll go out there in the summertime. But I'm not sure I totally believe that yet until I see the transfer windows close, because like you had said, losing Daniel Gazdag, losing 72 goals, it's a pretty big hit, a pretty big shoes for an Indiana Vasilev, a Kevin Sullivan, Jeremy Raffanello to fill into.
So let's get into Philly's performance so far this season. In 2025, they are 4-3-1, fifth in the East with 13 points in 8 games. What are your thoughts on the team's performances so far?
Yeah, I mean, they started the season hot, 3-0, scoring 10 goals in those 3 games. And since then, they went 1-3-1, only scoring 3 goals in the process. Ty Baribo still leads MLS in goals with 6. I know Atlanta's Latte Lot is right behind him with 5 goals. And yeah, the goals have dried up for Ty Baribo and for this team in general. And I think if you would ask Union fans not even 3 weeks ago, a month ago or so, they would have been in La La Land. And you even saw in the national coverage too, nobody could believe that the Union were off to that hot of a start. And it kind of reminded me of what Bradley Cornell did in St. Louis in his first season, where they were MLS's darling child and seemed like no matter what, they can never lose. And yeah, they got a lot of goals gifted to them in Bradley Cornell's first season, particularly with João Klaus being the recipient of those poor mistakes in the back. But yeah, I think we've seen against Orlando City and New York City, the 2 most recent opponents against the Union, they played a low block. They forced the Union to have the ball. When the Union turned the ball over in the opposition's half, then they go on the counterattack. And so I expect a lot more teams to play that way. I don't know if that's a way that Ronnie Dyla is going to play with Atlanta, but I do think they have enough talent to hit the Union on the counterattack with their front 3. I think that more and more teams are going to see, hey, look, don't give the Union a chance to hit us on the counterattack. They do have a good attack, even though Daniel Gazdag is missing. Ty Baribo is a clinical finisher. Bruno Damiani's had a lot of chances the last couple of weeks, but his shots wind up getting blocked, or the goalkeepers just make good saves. So it's not like the Union aren't finding themselves in the right positions. But what teams are doing, like I said, they're playing low blocks. Not a ton of chances these last two games for the Union. And I expect that to be how teams approach the Union going forward, and especially at Subaru Park, where the Union struggled. They only won 4 games, and that was a franchise low in terms of wins at Subaru Park last season. And I think, teams come in here, play a low block, rough the Union up, which they're not used to happening, and then hit you on the counterattack. You're going to see a lot of frustrated players on the field. You're going to see a lot of frustrated fans. And so I think, yeah, there is something to what Orlando City and New York City have done these last 2 weeks. And we'll see if teams pick up on that. And I do think Atlanta United could be a team that would produce havoc against the Union if they decide, hey, look, we're going to play this low block. We're going to hit you on the counterattack. And Bradley Cornell had said today at his press conference that, the Union are right where he expected them to be in this point of the season. He said, we've won the games that we're supposed to win. And I would say that's pretty much true. I think New York City could have been or should have been at least a draw because that's a really poor New York City team. They are struggling under and their coach in New York City, and brand new coach, and just trying to understand the playing style in New York City. And both teams look so sloppy turning the ball over, and a point was definitely up there for the Union. And maybe if they were clinical, creating a little bit more chances, maybe a win was there. St. Louis City, I think, was the game that was telling for me, where the Union had 8 players away on international duty, 9 players if you count Alawatu Makanya, who was suspended for that game with a red card. And we saw depth shine for the Union in that game. And Indiana Vassilev made his first start that game. Bruno Damiani, I believe that was his first start in the game. Jan Glavinovic, who's going to be out for this game due to tearing his meniscus against Orlando City a couple weeks ago. Just a lot of players that, were getting their first chances to start, stepped up big against St. Louis City with so many players out, whether it be international duty or suspension. And so the Union definitely going to have to look at that bench to continue to step up. And with no Daniel Gazdag, it puts even more pressure, I think, on some of these players. But Bradley Cornell believes that, look, this is exactly where the Union should be. He believes in this team. The squad believes in themselves. And we'll see what happens with the Union going forward.
So decent start for the Union. We'll get into the game in just a minute. But before we move on to that, are there any more of these transfers that you really want to get into?
Yeah, Jovan Lukic, I think he's probably one of the best number 6s in MLS already. The Union got him from Serbia, and this guy's a ball winner, and that's all he does is win balls, and constantly looks to transition from defense to offense, and he's all over the field. He's not afraid to put in a tackle. Him and Danley John Jock are the 2 6s for the Union. They have a really good understanding of one another, and it's like when one pushes, the other stays back, and so that's been part of the Union's success too. Yes, we talked about the 10 goals in the first 8 games that the Union scored, with Ty Baribo being the recipient of six of those goals. But without a Danley John Jock or Jovan Lukic, who was the most recent addition in this winter transfer window, that allows the forwards to do what they want to do. With them winning the ball back quickly, springing them forward on the counterattack, finding a Daniel Gaz like a Quinn Sullivan out wide, or finding a Kai Wagner push out wide on the left-hand side. A lot of that starts with Jovan Lukic, and his passing, I think, is a little bit underrated too. And we've seen him at his best breaking those lines, and I think Union fans are coming to expect, hey, look, whenever he's on the ball, he's going to make things happen. And we've seen him score 2 goals too this season, and you don't normally get a ton of goals from a number 6, but to see 2 goals in 8 games from one of your 6s, it's pretty impressive stuff. But yeah, I would definitely highlight Jovan Lukic. I think he's going to have a big game against Atlanta United, and I would feel comfortable and confident saying that for every game that the Union have going forward, just because he's been that good for the Union.
Certainly a player to watch. Let's get into some more players to watch in this game. Here is the predicted 11. Walk me through this 11 and highlight some of the key players we have to look out for.
Yeah, so the only one that I would say would be questionable is Andre Blake. Bradley Cornell had said that Blake was day-to-day. He missed the game against New York City due to a adductor injury. And Bradley Cornell even told us after the game that, yeah, Blake's just day-to-day. And he said they're going to give a full evaluation to Blake tomorrow on Friday and see where he's at. And so hopefully Andre Blake is good to go. But if not, then we'll see Andrew Rick at the start. Um, and I do wonder, if this is Andre Blake just like I said, he missed 51% of the Union's games in all competitions last year due to various injuries, whether it be groin injuries, he had concussions, knee injuries, just really, really banged up last year. And I do wonder, you know, maybe Andre Blake's a little bit psyched out just because, at any time, maybe he feels a little tweak or something. Maybe he starts to think the worst just because he missed so much action last year for the Union. Bradley Cornell, I mean, didn't seem too concerned, but here we are a day before the game and Bradley Cornell, or 2 days before the game, and Bradley Cornell saying, yeah, he's still day to day, and we'll go ahead and do a full evaluation on Friday and see where he's at. Doesn't strike me as feeling all that confident that he'll get the start. But I did submit him in the starting 11 just because Bradley Cornell had said day to day. And so hopefully Blake's good to go. If he does feel good, then he'll for sure get the start. But starting with the back line, Kai Wagner's an automatic lock in there. He's been one of the best left backs since he's been in the league since 2019. He creates a ton for the Union, loves going forwards, deadly on set pieces. Oluwatu Makanya, who got the start earlier in the season for the Union, but Jan Glavinovic had starting again St. Louis City and then Orlando City is when he tore his meniscus. And he started the season slow because of hamstring injuries in preseason with the Union. And once he fully got fit, then he got into the lineup with Makanya missing against St. Louis City due to that red card, scored the game-winning goal, and then tore his meniscus 7 minutes in the game against Orlando City. So Makanya is going to go in there starting with Jacob Glesnes, who started all 8 games for the Union. Like I had mentioned earlier, he's a player that is easy to beat 1v1 on the dribble, not the quickest guys, and I would expect Atlanta United to go at Jacob Glesnes pretty heavily in this game. New York City went after Oluwatu Makanya pretty heavily, made 2 mistakes over the weekend, one that led to the goal, one that probably should have been in goal for New York City in the first half. He missed his tackle. So the center backs Union, pretty shaky, and a lot of people in the media would probably say the Union probably should have went out and signed 2 center backs in the offseason. They allowed Jack Elliott to leave in free agency to Chicago Fire. He did have an option for 2025, but Ernst Tanner didn't feel comfortable paying that number, try to renegotiate a new contract, and Jack Elliott winds up leaving. Jacob Glesnes making a little bit over $1 million. That contract was really hard for the Union to get out of. They didn't want to go ahead and outright cut him, and so for the Union, they hope that Jacob Glesnes could return back to his form. And like I had said, we've seen multiple mistakes already from Jacob Glesnes. So center backs are a little bit questionable for the Union this season. And then Nathan Harriel, he's been nursing himself back to full fitness. He's missed most of the season due to what was it, a hamstring injury or quad injury? I forget, something in his leg that he missed all of preseason and majority of the season. And so he had just starting again at right back. And Frankie Westfield's been a player that started majority of the games for the Union, filling in for Nathan Harriel. But I do feel confident that Nathan will get the start for the Union just because he seems to be fully fit or close to fully fit for the Union. And I would say he's more seasoned than Frankie Westfield, but Frankie Westfield hasn't done anything to not justify him starting. But Kai Wagner is, like I said, one of the best left backs in MLS, and Frankie's not going to start at left. And when Nathan Harriel's fully fit, yeah, he's definitely a top 10 MLS right back in the league. And so I expect Nathan Harriel to get the start. And then in the midfield, people, I guess, you probably post this on YouTube and then in the podcast feed. So maybe people not watching on the podcast feed. The Union under Bradley Cornell play a 4-2-2 formation. So 4 in the back, and then 2 defensive midfielders, 2 attacking midfielders that essentially play as wingers, and then 2 forwards. The 2 sixes, I talked about them a little bit earlier, Jovan Lukic and Danley John Jock. They're ball winners. Jovan's more of a playmaker than Danley. So as soon as Danley wins back the ball, he's looking out wide. He's looking for Jovan for the pass. And so not much more that I'd add about them other than, they're grinders in the midfield. They're going to make you feel it on their challenges. They do a good job protecting that back line. Your 2 outside 10s, I went with Indiana Vassilev, who started, like I mentioned, against New York City. Fully expect him to continue to get the starts until the Union bring in another number 10. Will that be before the April 23rd transfer deadline? Who knows? But Indiana Vassilev didn't look that impressive against New York City, but yeah, I, I mean, he's a player that has Bradley Cornell's full trust and knows how Bradley Cornell wants to play in this system. So I think, whether it be Indy cutting in from the left or the right, pressing is his strongest suit, and that's what Bradley Cornell wants a lot in this formation is pressing, pressing, pressing. And so maybe Indiana Vasilev's not going to create as much as a Daniel Gazdag would have, but pressing is something that Bradley Cornell values highly, and that's exactly what you get in Quinn Sullivan as well. I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but Quinn Sullivan's either number one or two in chances created for the Union. Probably one now since Kai Wagner's missed 2 games this season with a abductor injury. But Quinn, the only thing that's missing from his game is scoring goals. He'll press till he can't press anymore. He creates a ton of chances for this team. He likes taking players on 1v1 on the dribble. You see him drift from the left to the right side, vice versa. He's a very versatile player in that front forward for the Union. He's a player that will just work his tail off. And again, like I had said about Indiana Vasilev, Bradley Cornell really wants his front four players pressing, and that's exactly what you get in Quinn Sullivan too. And then Damiani and Ty Brube are the two that I went with up front. Again, you see a lot of pressing from these guys. You see Bruno Damiani drop into the midfield with hold up play, connecting with a Quinn Sullivan or a Kai Wagner on the left hand side, making those forward runs. You see Ty Barubo, he's best inside the 6 yard box, getting one of those low crosses, those crosses in the air, just connecting these give and go passes. He's deadly in the 6 yard box. And Bruno Damiani, he's found himself in good positions too, going forward in that 6 yard box. But he's only got that one goal, and it was his debut goal against Cincinnati. But like what I've seen from him, getting in the right positions. But let's see if he can add a couple goals to his name these next couple weeks. But that's my starting lineup. I feel confident in the 10 out of the 11. But the biggest question would be, is Andre Blake going to be fully healthy for this game against Atlanta? If he isn't, then Andrew Rick would be the goalkeeper in there.
And now I want to go back and spotlight, Ty Baribo. He's had a great start to the season, 6 goals and 7 appearances so far. MLS Player of the Month for March, by the way. So that's cool. Do you think, this is just a matter of, he's having a hot start? Can he keep this going? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, Ty Baribo was a guy who had to wait his turn last season with Julian Kranza still at the club until the summertime when he left to go to Feyenoord on a free. And ever since, Ty Baribo got his first start against FC Cincinnati, where he scored 2 goals. It's what he's done is just score, score, score. And yeah, he's been a little bit quiet these last couple weeks. Got really hot, like you mentioned, winning MLS's Player of the Month for February/March. That was the first time since 2013, I believe it was 2012, maybe, that a Union player has won MLS Player of the Month. And yeah, the Union are going to need him to start finding the back of the net. And it's not a question of the Union not creating chances or their forwards not finding the right position. It's just good goalkeeping or just good defending from the opposition. We've seen just blocking shots, being in the right position. And yeah, we know how valuable good goalkeeping is. You guys saw it last year against Inter Miami in the playoffs with Brad Guzan just rolling back the clock and advancing you guys past Inter Miami. And so yeah, I think the Union have been a little bit unfortunate with good goalkeeping they've come across, or just good defensive efforts from the opposition. So I think it's a mixture of Kai Wagner missing the previous 2 games. He played against New York City this past weekend, but he missed against Inter Miami and Orlando City. Kai Wagner has been one of the Union's best chance creators the last few seasons, and him and Ty Brebo have seemed to have a really good connection up front, with Kai pushing up and just always finding Ty Brebo in that box. Like I said, specifically in the 6 yard boxes where Brebo's been pretty deadly. And let's see if they can rediscover that connection this Saturday against Atlanta. Kind of hard, I guess, on a baseball field where things are just so narrow, so short. And Kai Wagner had mentioned that after the game. Bradley Cornell had mentioned that after the game. And I feel like we hear that all the time. Whenever teams go into, whether it be at Citi Field or Yankee Stadium, everybody always complains about the baseball stadium. And what's interesting about that is Jim Curtin had success the last 3 seasons against New York City, beating them all 3 games. Bradley Cornell, this was the second game ever in charge at either Yankee Stadium or Citi Field, and his second loss. The first match, he was the interim coach as New York Red Bull manager and lost 5-2 with Red Bull. So, yeah, Bradley Cornell was not happy with that field after the game. Kai Wagner took shots at it, but it's like they've played in baseball stadiums since they've been a team. So it's like can't really use that as an excuse, I think. And so we'll see. Like I said, if Kai and Ty can rediscover that connection on the left hand side for the Union the Saturday against the Union. Quinn Sullivan too, I think, could be a player that could unlock Ty Baribo, and I'll be curious to see the connection between Ty and Bruno Damiani. As I mentioned, Mikel Uhr and Ty Baribo is what Carnell had went with for the first 4 to 5 weeks, and then once Baribo went on international duty during the week of St. Louis, Damiani went into that starting lineup. When Baribo came back, he took the spot of Mikel Uhr, and it's been Damiani and Baribo ever since. And let's see how the chemistry goes this season. It's still 8 games in, and I know you said, 25% of the way done the season. So you can't really make excuses with the season just steamrolling ahead. And so I still think these players are learning themselves the best runs and everything. And now you add in another new player in Indiana Vasilev, still trying to get caught up with his teammates, is familiar with the system. But like you said, the season is 25% of the way complete. And there is no excuses. You got to get results.
Absolutely. The season's just flying by, man. So tell me, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses that Philadelphia brings into this game? Where can they hurt Atlanta, and where can Atlanta hurt them?
Yeah, let's start where Atlanta can hurt the Union counterattacks. I mentioned it earlier, playing a low block, allowing the Union to have the ball. And yes, we've seen good moments of play of the Union passing and breaking teams down with their passing, but they're more of a team that wants to hit you on the counterattack, not have the ball. Bradley Cornell says that this team is comfortable having the ball if they're forced to have it, but ideally playing a pressing style, you don't want to have the ball. You want to hit teams on the counterattack. You want to turn them over in the defensive half. And so I look for Atlanta United just hitting the Union on the counterattack, getting Miguel Armorant on the ball as often as possible, getting Latte Lot into space and behind that back line. I think he is going to find a lot of success getting in behind a Jacob Glesnes, who I mentioned is not the fastest player. Aluetu Makanya has been shaky at times too, defending 1v1. So I think that's a real area that Atlanta United is going to exploit, have success in this game. But for the Union, they're a really deadly team on set pieces, and especially when you have Kai Wagner back, whether it be on corner kicks or free kicks, he always picks out the right pass. And so Union have a lot of tall players back there in Jacob Glesnes and Makanya. Nathan Harriel's the best jumper on this team in the air. Bruno Damiani, I think, is listed at 6'1", 6'2". He's good in the air as well. So the Union have been deadly the last few seasons under set piece coach Frank Leich, and they've continued to be dominant on set pieces this season. So I think that's an area to see the Union, go and dominate Atlanta United, because teams have struggled on the many different set piece looks. And I think the Union are going to continue to look at that for opportunities to exploit. And then, yeah, they're going to want to hit Atlanta United on the counterattack. They're going to want to press, win the ball back high up the field, force defensive mistakes. And if the Union can get a goal early on, I can continue to see them putting the pressure on the pressure. But this Atlanta United team, I know they've not been in the greatest form this season. They have a lot of attacking players that can hurt you at any moment. So the Union have to be wary of the counterattack in this game.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes, because Atlanta does have, like you said, very good attackers, but at the same time, sometimes they struggle to put things together. And then at the back, leave the door open. That's where a lot of mistakes have happened, and they've had to pay for it. So we'll see what happens there. Anyway, we've gotten to arguably the most important part of the show, where we talk about the score predictions. Now, as I tell everyone that comes on here, we do a score prediction challenge, the staff at Scarves and Spikes, and we include y'all, the guests on this show. Y'all are doing pretty well. Y'all are in second place. You got to keep it going. What is going to be the score of this game?
What did Tyler say? Did he give a prediction yet? Do you know?
Tyler, okay, so Tyler and I both said 2-1 Philly.
Wow, you guys said a Philly win.
Yes.
I'm going to go a 1-1 draw.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Just because I think, the Union are going to struggle defensively. I think Atlanta United's going to have plenty of opportunities on the counterattack. And I know there's always been high scoring between these two teams. And maybe a 2-2 draw. Maybe I'll change it. Instead of 1-1, I'll say 2-2. I think we're going to get lots of goals in this game. Defensively, I don't know how much I trust Atlanta United. Still trying to learn the system under Ronnie Dyla. But like I said, I mean, defensively, especially the two center backs, they scare me a lot. And so I expect to see a lot of counterattacks in this game for Atlanta United. And if Andre Blake's not in goal, maybe the Union actually lose this game. But I'll say 2-2. That's going to be my prediction.
Interesting. I would never trust Atlanta's defense the way things are going, but hey, we'll take it. By the way, who scores the goals?
Oh, man. Now you're really putting me on the spot. I'll say. Do you want Atlanta's too, or just the Unions?
If you want, I'm really just looking for the Union.
Yeah. I'll say for the Union, Ty Baribo gets on the score sheet, and I'll say Nathan Harriel. And for Atlanta, I think we'll see a Lot goal and then a Laba Janisse goal.
We love some Saba time down here. Anyway, Todd, before we get out of here, you have any final thoughts about the game?
Yeah, just hope we see exciting soccer. I don't know if I can take too many more weeks of just boring chances missed and barely any chances created. It's what we got the last 2 weeks that we watched the Union against Orlando City and New York City. So I'm hoping we get goals this week.
Where can people find you and your work?
You can go ahead and check out the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Free Kick Pod, live every single Sunday and Monday, doing a match review of that previous game. And then selfishly, why I want goals is I do goals breakdown, where every single week I break down goals, chances created in the games for both teams. And so the last couple weeks, only one goal in the New York City game, 0-0 against Orlando City. So, man, I'm really hoping I have some goals to break down this week between Atlanta and Philadelphia. But yeah, you can find all these videos and the podcast live on youtube.com/Free Kick Pod. Or if you're looking to check out my writing, the podcast, and the goals breakdown video all in one place, thefreekick.substack.com.
Sweet. Well, Philadelphia Union versus Atlanta United at Subaru Park this Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't already, be sure to check the website, scarvesandspikes.com, where we have news, analysis, opinion, all sorts of stuff. I had an article go up there about Noah Cobb, so go read about his story. It's a really fascinating one. Also, be sure to check out the shop for merchandise. We got hats, we got t-shirts, we got hoodies, we got tons of stuff. I am wearing none of that right now, so I am obviously doing a great job of selling this. But go check it out for yourself. And join the Patreon for exclusive content, the Discord, and more. You get, depending on the tiers, you get some discounts, you get access to more things. So be sure to check that out and support independent journalism. That's going to do it for this episode of Across the Pitch. Todd, thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks so much, Henry, for having me on the show. And I echo exactly what you say. Support independent soccer. That's the backbone of soccer here in America. So without independent content creators and journalists, I think this sport would be lacking severely. So yeah, support local soccer. And for everybody at Scarves and Spike, you guys do a fantastic job. And Tyler and Sydney too, love what those guys are doing, and yourself too, Henry. So you guys do a fantastic job with Scarves and Spikes, and I love the intro too. I was kind of hoping when you would have me on the show, I was wishing that I would hear the intro, but I guess I'll have to go back and listen to this episode and listen to it.
For sure, man. Thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.